They told us the galaxy had its own problems and Earth wasn't invited. For decades we believed that we weren't ready for deep space conflict anyway. Not with half our countries still arguing over borders, water, and broken treaties. So when the Intergalactic Federation came to the solar system and offered Earth observer status instead of military alliance, our leaders called it a win. Stay neutral, they said. Let the other species burn each other out. And we did for nearly 30 years. Our satellites watched in silence as whole civilizations vanished in the outer sectors, star charts updated weekly, planets marked green one day, gone the next. The Korek and Zelari war was brutal but distant. Politicians gave speeches about diplomacy. Tech companies gobbled up alien patents. The average man didn't care. It wasn't our fight. Not until Arcadia. Arcadia was Earth's first and only real colony beyond Mars, a terraformed moon on the edge of the neutral zone built by working-class humans who got tired of Earth's overcrowding and broken promises. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, home to about 60,000 people, mostly engineers, miners, farmers, folks just trying to build a life from red dirt and metal. My brother was one of them. His name was Tom, 5 years younger than me, always the quiet type, liked puzzles, fishing, and building drones. Out of scrap, he got recruited for Arcadia early, said Earth felt too loud, too fake. I envied him, to be honest, while I rotted in a dead-end security job back on Luna. He was out there, living like a pioneer. Then came the broadcast. It wasn't even official. Someone hacked the emergency comm relay and pushed it through the black channels. I was on shift when it hit the feed. No encryption, no codes, just raw footage. Screams, fire, a mother dragging her child across blood-soaked soil, soldiers, non-human armor like bone, faces covered in spines. One of them tore a man in half, not metaphorically. I watched his rib cage open like a busted engine. They didn't speak, didn't demand anything. They just destroyed. The video cut off after 9 minutes. No survivors confirmed. The Federation called it a territorial mistake. 60,000 civilians turned to ash, and they had the audacity to call it a mistake. The president of Earth issued a formal complaint. They even sent flowers to the families of NBSP and NBSP bouquet to my mother. The Federation promised an inquiry, said the attackers, some rogue sect from the Zelari side, didn't represent the larger Galactic Council, but no one was punished. No reparations, no arrests, no names. That's when something inside me cracked. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't trained for war. Hell, I barely handled a weapon outside of Sims, but I knew this: if I waited for Earth to act, nothing would happen. We were too soft, too political, too afraid to look weak in the eyes of the galaxy. So I packed my gear, burned every bridge I had, and left Luna without clearance. I wasn't alone. Turned out I wasn't the only one who saw the footage and said, no more. There were others, former Marines, miners, hackers, even a few ex-cons with scores to settle. We didn't have a flag, but we had rage enough to ignite a sun. We called ourselves the Black Mark. Our mission wasn't justice, it was retribution. We weren't looking to negotiate either. We were going to make the ones responsible bleed, and if the Federation wanted to keep calling it a mistake, then we'd make them regret underestimating Earth's capacity for Vengeance. Because that's the thing they never understood about humans. We're slow to start, but when we do, we finish wars. And I was just getting started. You'd be surprised how fast people volunteer for suicide missions when they've got nothing left. We weren't trained, not in the way real armies are. Most of us didn't even know each other's real names. I went by Cole. That wasn't the name on my Luna ID, but it was what I gave them when I arrived at the Red Docks, the unofficial shipping graveyard orbiting Jupiter, where smugglers and outlaws traded parts in silence. It was where the Black Mark was born. Our first camp was just 6 gutted cargo ships, welded together. No medbay, no chain of command, just pain, purpose, and a pile of stolen gear. There was a woman everyone called Captain, not because she earned the title, but because she had a ship that still worked, an old retrofitted Earth hauler rebranded as the Scythe. Fast, ugly, and illegal in most systems. She didn't ask many questions. None of us did. She only had one rule: we don't stop until they beg for mercy. And we all agreed there'd be no mercy. The first stop came fast. Recon from a deep scan technician, a twitchy kid with a face full of scars, showed a Zelari outpost just outside the neutral zone. Tiny, barely defended, but it had a beacon registered to the same military sector that led the Arcadia massacre. That was enough. It's just a comms post, someone muttered. They won't expect anything. Exactly, I said. Let's introduce them to hell. We geared up in silence. No speeches, no flags waving, just the grim loading of stolen rifles and exosuits, most of them half working and glitching with every boot up. I strapped on an old EarthTech pulse repeater, 3 mags, 1 crack scope, and a trigger that stuck when it got hot. Perfect. The flight there took 2 days long. Enough for doubt to creep in if you let it. I didn't. I spent most of it watching the old Arcadia footage again. Every scream etched deeper into my skull. My brother's voice didn't show up in it, just his name on the manifest. But that was enough to keep my rage sharp. We dropped at 300 ship time. Ziller Tech wasn't made for stealth detection. Their sensors focused on energy bursts and metal density. Lucky for us, the Scythe ran off a dirty core that didn't register clean on Galactic grids. We touched down a kilometer from the outpost and hiked through black rock and frozen dust. One of our crew had a leg brace. Every step clicked like a ticking bomb, but no one dared to ask him to stay behind. We were all broken. We moved anyway. The outpost looked like a rusted beetle, low, hunched, barely alive. Just 3 structures, 1 antenna, 2 guards. I remembered thinking, this is going to be too easy. It wasn't. The moment we breached the east gate, the place lit up like a Christmas flare. Alarms wailed, turrets popped from the dirt, and those 2 guards, combat drones, heavy Zelari class, reinforced with internal shielding and multi-lock targeting. One of them shot our point man through the throat before we even got a round off. Blood sprayed across the dust. The man didn't scream. His body just dropped like a puppet with the strings cut. And then chaos hit. I ducked behind a steel crate and fired blind. My shots sparked off the drone shell. 1 hit something vital because it began to twitch before exploding into a ball of fire and metal. Go move, the captain screamed. We surged forward, bullets ripping past us. 2 more men fell. One screamed for his Mother, the other didn't make a sound. I shoved past the bodies, rage blinding my fear. Inside the control chamber it was colder than ice. Ziller Tech ran hot. Always did, but the room felt dead, and there, standing behind a translucent console, was the bastard who made it all. Worse, not a soldier, not a warrior, a clerk, thin, pale, hands shaking, eyes blinking in panic. No armor, no weapon, just a data pad in his clawed fingers. He tried to speak something in that horrible clicking language of theirs. I didn't let him finish. My boot shattered his jaw. The others dragged him to the floor. We didn't ask questions. We didn't need answers. We made him talk anyway. The captain brought out the injector, something banned by Federation law. It didn't kill him, but it made his nerves feel like they were on fire. Every time he tried to lie, we increased the dose. In 20 minutes we had names, we had locations, we had proof. He confirmed what we suspected. The Arcadia strike wasn't a mistake. It was a test, a live fire simulation on a low-value colony. They knew it was human, knew it wasn't armed. That was the point. The Zellari wanted to measure their new weapons in a real-world scenario. Arcadia was just the test bed. 60,000 lives wiped out so some alien general could write a report. I wanted to kill the clerk slowly. I wanted to peel his skin and bury him under the very stones he thought belonged to his people. But I didn't. Instead, I broadcasted the confession. Every black channel, every comm frequency, every pirate wave that reached across the stars. I wanted the galaxy to hear it. I wanted every human in every system to know what we were to them. Guinea pigs. The scythe took off with fire on our tail. The Zellari didn't respond immediately, probably didn't expect a ragtag human militia to penetrate a military comms base. Their arrogance kept us alive. For now, back on the ship, the captain looked at me across the main hold. Her face was streaked with soot and blood. This isn't going to be a one and done, she said. You ready for that? I nodded. We just declared war. No, she said. You did, and now the rest of Earth's going to have to decide whether to follow you. I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone watching space pass by in silence, thinking about Tom, thinking about Arcadia, thinking about the long, bloody road ahead. We weren't diplomats, we weren't politicians, we were men who'd been pushed too far. The Federation forgot one thing when they left Earth out of their little war. Humans don't stay neutral when you kill their family. We don't forgive, we don't forget, we get even. And this was just the beginning. We didn't get a response to the broadcast for 3 days. Not a single word. That's how we knew it worked. The data pad we stole from the Zari clerk was loaded with reports, clear documentation, orders signed by higher command, words like civilian control group, non-combat, viability, and acceptable collateral. Acceptable. That word stayed in my head like a goddamn echo. We uploaded everything to EarthNet public unfiltered. The reaction came fast. There were riots in S. Paulo, mass protests in Neoland. Old veterans who had fought in the solar wars resurfaced on the feeds, screaming for retaliation. Families who lost loved ones on Arcadia threatened to storm government buildings if Earth didn't act, and still our so-called united government did nothing. We must verify the authenticity of these claims, the Chancellor said in a carefully worded broadcast. Retaliation would only escalate tensions. escalate. 60,000 of ours were murdered, and we were worried about making things worse. That was the day we realized the truth. Earth was afraid of losing trade. Roots afraid of looking universalized. Afraid of the galaxy, but not us. We weren't waiting for permission. We weren't diplomats. We were ghosts in stolen ships, and we had already tasted blood, and now it was time to go for the throat. The clerk's data logs gave us a target, not a base, not a weapons lab, a convoy. Every week the Zalari ran a high-level resource transfer between Sector 9 and their outer military belt. It wasn't guarded like a warship because it wasn't supposed to be hit. It carried fuel, experimental tech, and high-value personnel, mostly logistics officers and scientists, exactly the kind of people who built the bombs dropped on Arcadia. They weren't warriors, they were thinkers, cowards behind desks, and now they were about to see what human ray looked like up close. We spent 4 days prepping. The Scythe got a refit extra. Plating scavenged from a wrecked patrol cruiser, 2 missile pods welded onto the undercarriage, and a reinforced hull lined with stolen Corarak fiber that could cloak us just long enough to pass. As space debris, our team grew too. Word spread fast, more men joined us. Half-blind sniper from the Martian frontier, a demolitions expert who once blew up a terraformer over Europa. Former Navy lieutenant dishonorably discharged for punching a Federation admiral, every one of them broken. Angry ready, we didn't hold hands, we didn't swap sob stories, we didn't need to. The rage was enough. We launched at 2200 hours. The convoy route passed through dead zone, no inhabited planets, no stations, just drifting wreckage and cosmic silence. Perfect place for an ambush. We arrived first, cloaked and drifting. I watched from the bridge as 3 Zalari vessels dropped out of warp, 2 haulers, 1 escort ship. Clean white armor, Federation tags, all legal, all unarmed on the surface. They didn't even scan us. That was their first mistake. I gave the order. Scythe surged forward like a beast. Unchained, our first missile hit the lead hauler dead center. No warning, no mercy. The explosion lit up the void. Like a dying star, shrapnel spun off in every direction. Screams filled the comms as their system scrambled to understand what was happening. The escort ship spun to respond, but they were slow, unprepared. By the time their shields came online, we were already inside their blind spot. 2 more shots ripped through their thrusters. Fire bloomed like flowers in 0 gravity. Then we boarded. This wasn't some long-range engagement. This was personal. We latched onto the side of the second hauler and cut through the hull. 0 Atmo flash you its pulse rifles. No words spoken. I was the first one in. Zalari technician tried to raise his arms. Maybe he thought surrender would work. Maybe he thought humans were like the Federation, clean, merciful, bound by rules. I shot him in the stomach. Others followed. No hesitation, no second chances. We swept the hall's room by room. Screams, fire, blood on the walls. We didn't kill them all. Some we left alive, just enough to tell the story. We made sure they saw our faces, human faces, snarling, unforgiving. When we finished, we rigged the ships to explode, left just enough fuel to drift toward the nearest Federation beacon, and got the hell out. By the time they found the wreckage, our message was already spreading. This wasn't justice. This was a warning. You touched Earth once, Next time we touch your home worlds. The reaction was nuclear federation. Leadership condemned us as terrorists. The Zelari called us primitive. Insurgents, the media labeled us. Extremists, assassination warrants were issued, our names, well, our aliases, were posted across every interstellar outpost. But something else happened too. Support not just from Earth, from colonies, from miners, from forgotten stations full of people who'd spent their lives ignored by the core systems. They started calling us the Black Mark, openly wearing patches, spreading footage, sharing war stories, donating supplies. We were no longer ghosts, we were a symbol, and that terrified them more than any bomb. The Federation responded by increasing patrol, deploying ships in neutral zones, but it was too late. The fire was lit. One night, 2 weeks after the convoy raid, I got a message. It wasn't from Earth, not directly. It came from a secure node buried under a civilian frequency. The voice was old, gruff, familiar. Name's Ward, the man said, used to run ops during the Titan skirmishes. Retired, but I saw Arcadia fall. I saw my granddaughter's name on that list. I'm too old to fight now, but I've got contacts, I've got gear, and I've got anger. You need it, you've got it. Then another message, and another, and another. They weren't joining us for politics. They weren't joining for fame. They were joining because the galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of when it was pushed too far, and now we were showing them we had momentum, we had fire, but fire without direction burns out, or worse, turns in on itself. I gathered the crew in the hold, about 20 of us now. Grimy, hardened, tired killers, none of us with any illusions left. We hit the convoy, I said. We made our point. Now we make war targets, the captain asked. I pulled up the next location. From the data pad, a laboratory hidden deep in Sector 14, Zelari owned but Federation backed. They didn't build weapons there, they built the logic behind them, the algorithms, the targeting. Is the calculations that decided which colonies were acceptable risks. Cold, detached, mathematical genocide. We don't blow it up, I said, we make it suffer. We turn their data against them. We break them from the inside. The room was silent, then nods, guns locked and loaded. We weren't fighting for peace, we were fighting to remind the galaxy why Earth was always feared. In the old days, why every empire that tried to conquer us ended up regretting it, not because we were the strongest, not because we had the best tech, because once you make it personal with humans, we don't stop, not until everything burns. Sector 14 wasn't on most maps, not unless you had access to classified Federation star charts or were willing to pay a smuggler to talk. It was off lane, way past the usual trade routes, buried behind astral fields and dark energy pockets. That's why they built the lab there, to stay hidden, untouched, protected by secrecy. Too bad for them, we didn't care about their secrets. Ward's contacts came through. He sent us a full schematic of the facility, everything from entry hatches to internal oxygen flow. Turns out the old man used to run Black Ops for Earth's intelligence core. After the Arcadia footage leaked, he pulled every string he had left and cracked the Zari encryption like it was a toy. This lab doesn't build bombs, he said. Through the secure channel, it builds decisions. At first that didn't make sense. Then I saw the data. The lab was run by a Council of Zalari scientists who specialized in predictive warfare. They wrote code to decide who should die in a conflict and who could be safely ignored. They were the ones who calculated Arcadia's worth, ran the simulations, crunched the numbers, and signed off on mass extermination as a cost-efficient tactic. They never pulled a trigger, never touched a weapon, but they made the death possible. In my book, that made them worse. We planned the op in silence, no celebration, no jokes, just grit and fire. The scythe would drop us just beyond the sensor range. The captain would stay on standby for exfil, ready to pick us up once the job was done, or more likely, once we lit the place up. I took 6 men with me, not the biggest team, but size wasn't the goal. Speed, precision, chaos, that was what we needed. The lab was carved into the side of a dark rock moon orbiting a dying star. Black glass surface, no vegetation, no cover. They built it that way on purpose. Nothing could hide in open sight, so we came in below a wormhole tunnel half filled with cooling sludge. Ran underneath the structure used to regulate temperature across the lab. Nobody in their right mind would crawl through it. That's why it was perfect. We suited up, exoprames reinforced. Silence mode on. I went first. The tunnel was hell, filthy, pressurized. Wrong, every breath tasted like rot and acid. We had to crawl most of the way. By the time we reached the inner shaft, our suits were corroded and 2 of the team had vomited into their helmets. Still, no one complained. I forced open the hatch. Inside, steel walls, cold light, clean hallways, Zalari architecture, efficient, lifeless. We split into 2 groups. Team 1 would disable comms and internal sensors. That was me, the sniper, and the demolitions expert. Team 2, led by the captains, second, would breach the primary data core. We had 20 minutes max. After that, the auto defense grid would reboot and cook the entire place in radiation. I moved fast, clearing corners with the sniper. Close behind, we encountered the first lab tech near the West Wing junction. He was alone, holding a data pad, humming it. That guttural Zalari tone, like it was just another day at the office. I put a round through his skull. We moved on. No alarms, no resistance. They weren't expecting anyone. Why would they? Earth was neutral. Civilians were supposed to be civilized. Idiots. We reached the comm center and planted the Blackwave disruptor, custom rig designed to fry everything from internal calls to long-range transmissions. Once triggered, they'd be deaf and blind. The demo guy smiled. 10 seconds. I nodded. Do it. The lights flickered, then the screams began. Team 2 had breached the data core. Zalari researchers flooded out into the halls, confused, panicking. Some had protective suits, others didn't. One of them tried to talk, raised his hands, and began shouting something in English. Please, I'm not. I shot him in the chest. The others ran. Let them. We didn't come for fear. We came for truth. We reached the data core 5 minutes later. The second team had secured it. Barely. 2 men down. One was missing. Half his face, still breathing somehow. No one dared move him yet. The mainframe loomed over us like a shrine, glowing with intelligence, a swirling network of processors feeding off energy cores so dense they could fry a planet if detonated wrong. This was their brain. This was where they played God. I want it all, I said. Download every file, every model, every piece of logic. That led them to Arcadia. One of our hackers got to work, the rest of us rigged the mainframe with thermal charges. I didn't want to just shut it down, I wanted it gone. I wanted their history erased, their gods to choke on. Smoke. Cole the hacker called, you should see this. I stepped over, on-screen simulations, thousands of them. Maps of Earth, charts, population grids, resource outputs, cost-benefit diagrams. They weren't just planning the Arcadia strike, they were planning more. Mars, Luna, even old Earth itself, our home, wasn't off limits, it was just further down the list. My blood turned to ice. They weren't testing weapons, the hacker whispered, they were testing responses. That was the real project. The Zelari wanted to know how far they could push humanity before we pushed back. Arcadia was the first domino. They were planning global extermination cycles, slow, incremental, designed to look like accidents, freak invasions, or rogue military activity. If we hadn't fought back, if we'd stayed neutral, they would have erased us one colony at a time, until there was no one left to remember we ever existed. I looked at the others, no more hesitation, no more debate. Burn it all, I said. We extracted the data we needed, uploaded a live dump to EarthNet and 20 secure backup channels. Then we lit the fuses as we sprinted for extraction. The corridors shook behind us, fire spread like judgment. The walls screamed with pressure. Collapse, oxygen vented, gravity failed. One of our men got caught in a blast wave, gone in an instant, no time to grieve. The scythe was waiting. We latched on and ascended fast, seconds before the moon split apart from orbit. The lab looked like a dying eye, flames leaking from the pupil. Then it cracked, collapsed, and vanished into the black void it deserved. No survivors, no structure, just silence. We returned to the red docks to rest, refuel, rearm. But there was no rest anymore, not for any of us, because that footage we released, it changed everything. Earth couldn't pretend anymore. The Federation couldn't lie, and the Zelari, they started running. We'd killed their future before they could kill ours. But this war wasn't over, not even close. Now the whole galaxy knew that Earth was awake, and we weren't done yet. The explosion at the Sector 14 lab was felt across 3 systems, not physically, but politically, economically, and psychologically. Every government, corporation, and military intelligence group that once treated Earth like a curious, backward child now stared at us like we were a wildfire, something primal, dangerous, uncontrollable, and worse, inspiring. The video of the lab's destruction went viral on every pirate net, Blackstream, underground comm, and outer colony feed. It showed the firestorm from orbit, showed our team exiting the scythe, showed a snippet of the lab's logs, translated and captioned, human colonies pose low threat and high yield. Strategic annihilation recommended over assimilation. After that, neutrality wasn't an option anymore. Some called us heroes, others called us terrorists. The Federation called for our immediate capture and execution. They didn't even bother hiding it anymore. A kill on sight. Bounty was posted for the black mark, with a special reward for anyone who brought me in alive. But something unexpected happened. Earth hesitated. We thought they'd disown us right away. We were expecting an official denial, maybe a quick diplomatic sacrifice, our names on a screen with words like criminal or unaffiliated extremists. But no statement came, not for a full week, while the Federation screamed for justice. Earth United Assembly said nothing. And that silence that was louder than any speech. We picked up chatter from EarthNet that blew us away, protests in the millions, people in every major city, demanding their government not just protect the black mark but join us. Young people wore our emblem, an old black Earth flag with a crack down the middle. Soldiers began refusing off-world orders, police forces in Martian colonies went on strike, demanding Earth break ties with the Federation. Whole mining outposts declared autonomy, and then the big one hit. 2 Earth warships, the Resolute and the Arc Bridge, broke protocol and flew out to orbit Saturn. Not a war zone, not a recon job. They came to find us. I met their captain on an abandoned orbital refinery. He didn't wear medals, didn't give a speech. He just handed me a chip. Command still won't admit it out loud, he said, but off the record. They're watching, and some of us think it's time we stopped watching and started fighting. The chip was loaded with tactical maps, supply caches, and the locations of secret Zelari outposts that Earth intelligence had been monitoring. That was the moment I knew we were no longer alone. The black mark wasn't just a rogue cell anymore. We were becoming something bigger, a movement, a revolution, and revolutions don't end quietly. Of course, the Federation knew this too, and they weren't going to let us keep growing. Their answer came fast. The Zelari, backed by Federation clearance, launched a containment campaign in neutral space. That was their term. What it meant was bombing stations, targeting comm hubs, executing suspected sympathizers. One of those targets was an old transport stop on the edge of the Osiris Belt. It was called Gravestone Station, a scrapyard town floating in the shadow of an ice giant, mostly human-run, not military. No defenses, but they waved our symbol. And that was enough. We picked up the distress signal an hour too late. When we arrived, the place was in pieces, bodies floating through the docking bay. Children, elders, mechanics, one family, still clutching each other in a sealed escape pod that had never launched. We found the station's core partially intact. One voice log survived, a woman's voice. Trembling, they didn't ask questions, just fired. No warning. They kept shouting about traitors. We tried to tell them we were just helping with supplies. We didn't fight. We didn't. Silence. I played that clip every hour that night. I didn't sleep. None of us did. And something shifted after that. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were hunters. This wasn't about defending our dead. It was about making damn sure they never did this again. We put together a list. Every Zelari officer involved in the Gravestone massacre, every Federation bureaucrat who approved the campaign, every base they launched from, every ship that carried the orders. We would burn them down one by one. It started with the gunship Virex, lead vessel of the Osiris Strike Squad, a top-tier destroyer patrolling Federation controlled lanes with impunity. It was supposed to be untouchable. We made it disappear. I won't lie, the op cost us 2 ships destroyed, 9 men dead. We rammed the Virex from below, breached its fuel cell, and used a control detonation inside its fusion reactor. When the Federation blamed pirates, we corrected them. We hacked into the comm frequency and broadcasted one message. This was for Gravestone. You kill civilians, we kill you. No more lines. No more rules. The black mark sees you. Earth remembers. Then we release the full name of the Virex's commanding officer, his home, planet, his family. We didn't touch them, we just let everyone know we could. After that, even the Zellari started pulling back from certain routes. They called us barbarians, unhinged, unworthy of spacefaring diplomacy. We called it balance, but not everyone saw it that way. Some of Earth's own leaders finally broke silence. The Chancellor made her first statement in 3 weeks. It was cold, measured, full of that polished politician tone that made you want to put your fist through screen. We cannot condone the violent actions of the black mark, she said, but we also cannot ignore the injustices that have led to such desperation. Earth remains committed to peace, but we will no longer remain passive observers. It was a half step, a dance, the kind of talk that pleased both sides without meaning anything, but that line, we will no longer remain passive, sparked something, because within 24 hours, Earth military movements changed. They started shadowing Federation patrols, sending supplies to rebellious colonies, quietly releasing detained black mark sympathizers, and behind the curtain, more soldiers came to us, disillusioned, angry, looking for a cause that didn't answer to cowards. We trained them, armed them, turned them into shadows like us, but not all shadows agreed with us. We got a visitor on the scythe one night, an old war veteran, wore a real Earth military uniform back when that still meant something. His name was Harlan, quiet, wrinkled eyes like burned out stars. I came to warn you, he said, about what? You're getting too big, he said, too loud. The moment you start looking like a threat, you stop being a symbol and start being a target. Earth won't protect you forever. I stared at him. We don't want protection, we want justice. He sighed. Justice turns into vengeance. Real quick, and vengeance. He shook his head. It burns everything. I didn't answer because part of me knew he was right, but another part, the bigger part, knew we were already past the point of no return. We weren't fighting for medals, we were fighting because no one else would, and as long as the Federation and the Zellari kept killing our people and calling it order, we'd keep striking back. Every ship we destroyed, every lab we burned, every base we reduced to molten dust. It was a reminder. Earth may have stayed out of the war, but now the war was ours. It started with whispers, small ones at first, a merchant on a fringe colony, refusing to sell to anyone with the black mark insignia, a smuggler ambushed and stripped clean by his own crew when they found he was moving our supplies. A message intercepted, unsigned, brief, laced with venom. They're not heroes, they're terrorists. With a death wish, Earth can't survive with them alive. At first we shrugged it off. Enemies talk, enemies lie, but then we started losing people, not in firefights, not in raids, they just vanished. The first was Kira, our comms tech. She disappeared during a solo trip to a relay station on Heckin 4, no distress call, no trace. At first we thought maybe Zellari got her, but there was no activity reported on Heckin that day, just silence. Then came Braddock, transport operator, tough as iron, never missed a schedule, gone. His shuttle found floating in the black. Systems intact, engine disabled, pilot seat empty, no blood, no signs of a struggle, just missing. Then the message came, a high-level Federation broadcast, polished, rehearsed, and dripping with poison. Honey, a woman with perfect skin, perfect eyes, and a smile sharpened by. Committee looked into the camera and said the black mark has abandoned humanity. They operate outside law, outside diplomacy, and outside sanity. These extremists have endangered Earth. More than any alien threat, they do not protect us, they provoke annihilation. Then she played a clip. It showed a mining vessel exploding in deep space. They claimed we did it, only we hadn't. The ship was never on our radar. The route didn't even match any of our ops. But the video was compelling, blurry, dramatic. The screams were real. The deaths effective. That was their new weapon. Propaganda. They couldn't beat us in open combat, so they turned the galaxy against us, and it worked. We started losing support. Stations that used to hide us now refused our signals. EarthNet split in half. Some still believed us, others demanded our capture. The United Assembly issued a statement urging peace, but clearly aimed at pacifying Federation allies. The message was clear: get back in your cage or be put down. But the final blow didn't come from a screen, it came from inside. We were prepping a strike on a Zelari fuel hub when the ambush hit. We'd done the recon, scouted the outer defenses, mapped out patrol schedules, timed the entry windows down to the second. Still, they were waiting. They knew everything. The moment we breached the outer ring, we were swarmed. Drones, turrets, ground fire, a full-blown Zelari task force. We lost 5 people in the first 90 seconds, another 3 in the retreat. One of them was the captain's second, the woman who led Team 2 in the lab. She bled out in the loading bay, screaming our names. We barely made it out. Back on the scythe, blood in my mouth, ears still ringing. I looked around the ship. The crew was shaken, angry, silent. Someone had sold us out. And not just anyone, someone on the inside. We ran a trace on our secure channels. The betrayal came from a man named Ree. He was new, joined 3 weeks ago after defecting from Earth's security division. Claimed his brother had died on Arcadia, played the role well, rage, grief, the whole mask. I even liked the guy. Turns out he was planted, double agent, fed fake rage to get close, fed information back to the Federation while acting like he wanted blood. We caught him in the armory alone, downloading route maps. He didn't fight, didn't plead, just looked up and said, "You've already lost, you just don't see it yet." I didn't shoot him. I gave the order, had him locked in the waist chute. No air, no exit, just metal silence and gravity. Waiting, we jettisoned him mid-orbit. No speeches, no revenge, just consequences. But the damage was done. Half-hour operations compromised, support dropping, systems turning hostile. The Federation had done what we feared most. They made us the enemy, and Earth blinked. They issued new IDs for black mark fighters, criminal designations, they called it, to preserve peace and order. They didn't arrest us, but they no longer denied we were a problem. In the calm silence that followed, the scythe felt heavier than ever. I stayed in the war room most nights, watching maps, watching feeds, listening to intercepted calls. That's when I heard it, a transmission. Weak, cut with static, but unmistakably human. We survivors. Arcadia sector. Fragment habitable. Request extraction. I froze. It couldn't be. Arcadia was gone, burned, wiped. No signals, no life, but the voice repeated over and over, "This is Arcadia fragment, Tom. Marston requesting evac. Tom, my brother, he was alive. I played it back 12 times, analyzed every pitch, every word, every sound. It was him, but the message was weeks old. The signal origin came from a debris field far beyond Zalari lines, barely charted, likely crawling with hostile patrols. Rescue was suicide, but I didn't hesitate. This changes everything, I told the crew. The captain stared at me. We don't even know if it's real. Could be bait. I don't care. We can't afford another loss. He's alive. She looked away, jaw clenched, but she nodded. The next morning, we plotted a course to the Arcadia fragment. Half the crew thought it was madness, the other half. They strapped in, loaded their guns, and said, let's go bring him home. We reached the edge of Arcadia's grave just after cycle shift. No beacons, no welcome, no light, just darkness and the wreckage of what used to be a dream. The scythe systems began to glitch as we entered the debris field. Metal scraped across the hull like bones on glass. Static drowned the comms. Even the air felt different, thinner, as if space itself remembered the screams that had once echoed through it. Everyone on the ship felt it. No one said it out loud. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a funeral march. The original Arcadia colony had been a crescent-shaped complex built into the crust of the terraformed moon, ringed by habitat domes, solar arrays, and supply docks. But the Zari hadn't just hit it. They'd obliterated it. What remained now were shattered slabs of habitation, metal, twisted farms, and drifting corpses. Some were still in suits, some weren't. A few had frozen in their last moments, mouths wide, hands reaching for non-existent rescue. This was where my brother had died. At least that's what I believed, until his voice came through the dark. It started again as we drifted deeper into the wreckage. Arcadia fragment. This is Tom Marston. Limited O2, radiation high, supplies low, holding position in Sector 13. Gamma requesting evac. Same words, same voice, same desperate come. We pinged the coordinates. No signal source showed up. Could be pre-recorded. The captain warned could be a trap. I nodded. We'll find out. We suited up. Me, the captain, one medic and 2 gunners. The scythe held position while we drifted in on maneuver packs. Quiet, steady. Every second felt like being hunted. The sector wasn't far, maybe 20 clicks, but in the vacuum of a graveyard, it felt like a pilgrimage. As we approached, the wreckage grew tighter, denser, burned out hulls floated like tombstones. Something scraped across my visor, an old Arcadia flag, shredded and lifeless. Then we saw it, a pod, buried halfway into an asteroid-sized hunk of colony steel, sealed tight with emergency plating. It wasn't in good shape. Burn marks, cracked welds, signs of radiation damage, but it was still pressurized, a human handprint stained the window in dried blood. I moved in. The door lock was mechanical, manual override possible. I rotated the hatch, broke the pressure seal, and pulled it open. Inside was dark, stale air, cold. The scent of metal, sweat, and something older, rot maybe, but there were no bodies, just one man. He sat against the far wall, slumped but breathing thin. Pale, beard grown out, eyes sunken. He looked up at me and smiled. About time, he said. It was him, Tom. I dropped to my knees, grabbed his shoulder, tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat locked, my heart couldn't decide whether to shatter or Scream, he reached out. You look older, I laughed, half crying. You look dead. He chuckled, felt that way for a while. The captain moved in, checked his vitals. The medic injected stabilizers. He was weak, dehydrated, but alive, and he'd survived 2 months in hell. On the way back to the scythe, Tom spoke little. His voice was cracked like something that hadn't been used in weeks, but his eyes didn't blink much. They were always watching the dark, always scanning the edges of the debris. Once aboard, we put him in quarantine. Not because we didn't trust him, because space does things to people. Time, solitude, the kind of silence that breaks the mind if it stays too long. But Tom, he hadn't broken, not yet. When I finally sat with him alone, he told me everything. They didn't kill us all, he said, not at first. They wanted live readings, saw us as test subjects. They hit the colony center first, then moved methodically. Domes, farms, docks, they left the mid sector mostly intact. Why? He looked at me. Because they wanted to measure panic. I said nothing, my hands clenched until my knuckles cracked. Tom continued. There were about 30 of us left, maybe more. We hid, moved through tunnels, sent distress signals. Most of the comms were fried, but we tried. You made the broadcast? He nodded. Looped message, automated. I figured if I died, it might still reach someone. What happened to the others? His voice dropped. They stopped being human. I stared at him. What do you mean? He looked at me, then really looked. His eyes were hollow, but something glinted in them. They stopped hoping, stopped thinking of rescue, turned on each other. We had food rations, a few kept hoarding, some killed for water. I saw a man stab his own son over a filtered bottle. My stomach turned. Most of them died fighting, Tom said. One group tried to escape using an old ore shuttle they didn't know how to fix. The navigation system, it imploded on launch, and I ran. I buried myself in the wreckage, found this pod, reactivated the seal, and just waited. He smiled bitterly. You know what kept me alive? I shook my head. He leaned forward. That hit harder than any weapon I'd ever faced. Tom had survived hell because he believed I'd come for him, and I almost hadn't. He recovered fast physically, but mentally something remained jagged. He avoided the crew. He slept with a pistol beside him. He didn't flinch at gunfire, didn't react to blood, but he stared at the stars for hours, unmoving. Then on the 4th night, he came to me. I want to fight, Tom. I want to kill the ones who did this. I want them to see me. I want them to know someone survived. I couldn't argue, not with him, not after what they did. He wasn't my little brother anymore. He was one more ghost come back to make the galaxy bleed. I gave him a spot on the crew, trained, armed, ready, but deep down I felt something off, something just under the surface, not fear, not rage, emptiness. Whatever piece of him had kept him human, I wasn't sure it had come back with him. Tom was one of us. Now, he wore the black mark on his chest, carried a rifle like it was part of his arm, and moved through the ship with the silent confidence of a man who'd already died once and come back hungry. The crew welcomed him quietly, nodded, shook his hand, stepped aside. When he walked the halls, they respected survivors. They feared what he might become. Same as me. We didn't talk much after that first week, not like before. Something between us had changed, not broken but shifted. We'd both crossed lines, bled for it, And no matter how much love sat under the scars, war rewrote relationships. Tom wasn't my brother anymore, not the way he used to be. He was a weapon now. And I was about to point him at the enemy for the last time because we finally had it, the location of the bastion. The Zalari High Command's hidden war station, not a military base, not a shipyard. The bastion was worse. Floating city of officials, scientists, strategists, the core of their extermination policy, the ones who approved the Arcadia strike, the Gravestone massacre, the predictive warfare algorithms. It was the black heart of a species that saw humans as test cases and firewood. And now we knew where it drifted. Ward had delivered the coordinates, said he had one last favor to give before his body gave up on him. We thanked him. 3 days later he was dead, heart failure, quiet, alone. We didn't mourn long, couldn't. The bastion wasn't guarded by fleets that would have made it obvious. Instead it floated inside a plasma cloud, an uncharted mess of ion storms and gravitational noise. The Federation had paid to hide it for decades. Every signal inside the zone either got scrambled or disappeared. Perfect place to end a war. We didn't ask for backup, didn't try to get Earth to sign off. We just loaded up, kissed the void, and flew into hell. The Scythe took damage within minutes of entering the storm. Our shields buckled. Lights flickered. The hull groaned like it wanted to tear apart, but we held together. At the center of it all there it was, the bastion, a black spire rising from a spinning metal disc, glowing with electric veins, massive, quiet, smug, like it had never feared anything. We changed that in minutes. Our first strike hit its comb, the second hit its outer defense grid. By the time the bastion realized we were real, our boarding craft had already pierced the lower deck. There were 10 of us, all veterans now, all killers, not one of us wearing standard uniforms. Every gun customized, every face covered. The Zalari guards panicked. They expected invaders to come in fleets with declarations and negotiations. Instead they got us, men with no flags, no names, and no intention of leaving. Survivors. We tore through the lower decks, one hallway then another, blood, fire, screams. Zalari scientists tried to lock themselves in labs. We burned through the doors, executed 3 policy architects in a room full of servers, shot a Federation diplomat trying to escape through a side tunnel. We didn't care about rank anymore. Everyone on that station had signed the death warrant for Arcadia. Everyone was guilty. Tom led the charge on the command floor, didn't say a word, just kicked in the main chamber doors and gunned down 2 security officers before they could shout. The central command hub was full of coward suits and strategists blinking and begging. One tried to plead in broken English. We were just doing what the data suggested. Tom stepped forward slow. I was the data, he said, then pulled the trigger. The shot echoed longer than it should have. I moved beside him. There, sitting at the head of it all, was the Zari chief strategist, a thin, four-armed creature wrapped in ceremonial robes, breathing through a collar. Its eyes were wide. It didn't beg, didn't speak. It just looked at us. You started this, I said. It didn't answer. You made Arcadia a test field. You made us statistics. Still silence. You forgot the most important part of the equation. I stepped closer. When humans lose everything, we stop Thinking, we stop calculating, we stop caring about what's acceptable. Tom raised his weapon, the strategist. Lifted one finger. Wait, we paused. I warned them, it said, voice like wet stone. Told them humans would not stay quiet forever. They didn't listen. You still ran the models. Yes, but I did not create them. That makes you worse. And just like that, Tom fired one clean shot. The strategist slumped forward and the bastion began to burn. We planted charges on every mainframe, reactor, and shuttle bay, made sure nothing survived. No data, no escape, no records of who had once commanded genocide from a throne. As we sprinted for extraction, the alarms howled like dying wolves. Our ship took us back out into the plasma field just as the bastion ruptured behind us, imploding in on itself, then bursting outward in a glorious silent fireball. We watched from orbit. No one spoke. No one smiled. We had done it. We had avenged Arcadia, but victory didn't feel like it used to. It felt hollow. The news reached Earth in days. The Federation called it an act of madness. The Zolari demanded Earth sever all ties with anyone associated with the Black Mark. But Earth didn't blink. The Chancellor, who had danced her way through every previous speech, looked the camera dead on and said, perhaps it is time the galaxy learned what happens when humanity is made to feel helpless. Black market is not our creation, it is our consequence. And that was it. The Federation froze. All diplomatic talks, trade routes shifted, colonies declared independence one by one, and the Black Mark we disbanded, not in shame, not in defeat. We had done what we came to do. We weren't needed anymore. Some of us went home, some disappeared, some kept fighting under different names. Tom, he left without a word. One morning, he just wasn't on the scythe. No note, no farewell. I don't know where he went, but I know what he became. He wasn't built for peace anymore. None of us were. They say Earth is stronger now, more united, more feared. Good, let them fear us, because when they killed Arcadia, they taught us something we'll never forget. You can push humans, you can underestimate us. You can call us primitive, but if you make it personal, we will burn down your heaven to avenge our hell, and we won't stop until the last of you forgets how to sleep without checking the shadows. This is what happens when Earth goes to war. And this time we finished.